innovations work. And today I pleased to host Vince Stevenson. Vince has been claimed as a fear doctor, and he helps people to improve their public speaking for the last almost 2 decades. And today we're going to talk about how to make a confident point and use public speaking skills for this matter. Today I have a throat problem, so it would be, and Vince as well, so it would be a piece of a challenge for us. But that's what happens to any founder and to any leader. Life happens, and you still need to sound confident. You still need to be able to deliver. Vince, can you tell please a little bit more about your framework approach and what you teach people and how you help to overcome these confidence issues while doing public speaking?
Okay, well, that's a very big question. So I run 1 and 2 day courses. I run a 5 day course as well on public speaking, and it all begins really with a basic understanding. Most people feel that there's something about public speaking that is some kind of inherent virtue. It might be something that you're born with. But that's not true. None of us are born to language. We have to acquire language through practice. For example, if you want to ride a bicycle, you're going to fall off the bicycle numerous times, and it can be painful. It hurts. It's especially if it happens in front of your friends, your family. It has that kind of damaging effect on you. If you can learn to drive a car, which is pretty complicated, but I think most people do learn to drive a car because they want to. They recognise that there's a certain element of freedom. Once you own your car, you can go anywhere you want, when you want, with whoever you want, and that's fantastic. You don't really need to explain freedom to people; they can see it. Now, public speaking, of course, is a skill. It's a skill. It's a subjective skill. Driving a car is more of an objective skill. And if you keep crashing, objectively, that is giving you some feedback. Yeah, that's not going very well. Same with public speaking, to the point that you and I, we're both speaking, but we're both doing it differently. We both come from different backgrounds, different countries, different cultures. You name it, just about everything about you and I is very, very different, but we're doing exactly the same skill, but we're doing it differently. And I think what I really do very well with is to get people to understand that whatever it is that's holding them back is just an obstacle, and that with practicing what works consistently, that means you're going to get good, regular, consistent outcomes. Public speaking is a skill, and it's about practicing what works. And the more you practice what works, the more consistent you become, and the more confident you become. And then all of those anxieties begin to dissipate, they leave you, and then you can start enjoying that moment when you feel that you're becoming the speaker that you want to be. And that's what we practice in class. And we've been very successful with that, and it's a great way of making a living. To see people doing things that often felt that held them back. So it's nice to be able to help them on that journey.
And here I would like to make it 2 points for my co-fellow founders. I'm originally from Ukraine, so I come from non-English speaking country, and English is my second language. I practice it, but still, I mean, when you're born with language, it's totally different. And I know for a lot of founders, it's a setback. So they feel like, okay, it's not my language. I'm not confident enough. I need to have a Cambridge degree. I don't know, Oxford literature degree, whatever degree. Some kind of like a stamp that I'm great enough, good enough to speak English. But what I see across tech conferences in Europe and across the globe, that actually it doesn't matter. You can speak very simple English, but you need to make a point, and it's more about like arguments, how you lead discussion, how confident you sound, how confident you look, not about your vocabulary. Can you please bring some kind of perspective here as well for those who came from non-English background,
Yeah.
to help them to overcome this fear that they're not good
Okay.
enough?
Well, unfortunately, we had this dreadful, in my humble opinion, Brexit. Hasn't been a great result. I don't remember people running around shouting how great Brexit has been for Britain. And but before Brexit, we had people from all over the world, all of Europe, And what's always beautiful to see is how amazingly well international people speak my language. So my wife is Brazilian. She speaks beautiful English. And again, it's a skill, and the only way you're going to get good at speaking English is by practicing what works. And this comes back to my theme of what I teach in my public speaking. If you want to be good at something, then you need to practice what works. Yeah. There's lots of skills that we're all
And
familiar with. If you want to be a good cook, you need to practice, but you need to understand the physics of cooking, if you like. There are certain basic principles and theories behind cooking, for example, that mean that once you know those and you practice them regularly, you're going to become a good chef. Now, when I was a young man, my mother did all of the cooking at home. She was a great cook, and she didn't really particularly enjoy her sons being in the kitchen. And but I used to try to make dishes, but of course, if you don't have guidance, you're going to make mistakes. Now, fresh food, of course, is quite expensive these days. So I think some people, certainly when I was young, I didn't want to waste food. The thought of buying expensive food and then burning it or not cooking it properly was felt like a bad move. So I didn't really dive into being a cook or a chef as much as I might have done. But these days, with there's lots of courses that you can do online, you can watch, there's loads of cooking programs, and you can get that advice from people who are really experts. So if you want to be a good chef, practice what works, but you need to understand the principles, then you need to practice, and then of course you need to put that plate in front of people. And if nobody eats it, that's feedback. That's telling you that it doesn't taste very good, or it's undercooked, it's overcooked, or it just doesn't. The ingredients are wrong. And the nice thing about feedback is that, for example, if we use the analogy of making a cake, for example, or a pie, we have a great saying in England: the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And that means that whatever your project, if the project works and everybody likes it, then, and if you get really good feedback consistently, that's great. But coming back to the point about the pudding, is that if nobody eats the pudding, that is your feedback. Yeah, that tells you how well you did
Mhm.
with the dish. Yeah, but it's a great analogy,
and
it's a
here
great
we're
metaphor, and it's all about practicing what works.
mm.
So that's what we focus on.
And here I would like to jump to our next question. So I was like raised as a perfectionism. For me, I'm never good enough whatever I'm doing, and I sometimes it blocks me from action. Like Winston Churchill told that there is a great way to spell perfectionism. It's called paralysis. And I know that for a lot of I work with in tech industry, for a lot of founders and leaders, they try to make a perfect speech, they try to make a perfect impression, and basically it never gonna work because you can't be 100% about your audience response, you can't be 100% about like facts you brought to the room and whatever. uh, how to overcome this trap, how to like ensure yourself or support yourself with this attitude towards practicing that I'm not going to make a perfect speech today, I'm going to deliver my bullet points, and I presume I would receive a feedback on them. Or I mean, what kind of framework we can use here to help ourselves to start from a blank sheet?
I think the biggest issue that a lot of people face, certainly ones that attend my courses, uh, a lot of them are perfectionists. Now, perfection exists. Let me explain what I mean by that. I talk to people about objectivity and subjectivity. So, for example, in England, we have a culture of pub quizzes. We like to go to the pub, we like to be a team, and then people ask us questions. But the questions have got objective answers. So, for example, when was the Battle of Hastings? So the objective answer is 1066. Okay. So if somebody asks you 100 questions, 10 questions on history, 10 questions on geography, 10 questions on mathematics. Yeah. So they've got objective answers. So there is one correct answer. Okay. So let's say you score 100 out of 100. That is a perfect score. Congratulations. Okay. But life, unfortunately, is subjective. Business is subjective. All of life is subjective. So we had the Olympics last year, and the Olympic Charter says faster, higher, stronger, longer, heavier. So this is how they determine the winners of events. So that's great. You know who wins because you can measure it. But there are some disciplines like gymnastics and boxing and high diving, springboard diving, those kind of things, where you have to have judging. So they usually have about 9 judges, and everyone's given objective criteria. But interestingly, when those documents are completed and returned, all of those expert judges come up with different numbers. They all saw exactly the same thing in exactly the same circumstances, but everybody perceives it slightly differently. And that tells you something about the difficulty with perfection, because it's in the eyes of the beholder. And in the subjective realm, if you don't even have criteria in the first place, how will you know whether it's perfect or not? Well, I'm going to suggest that it's not going to be perfect anyway. If you're making a speech, for example, how are you going to get inside every member of the audience's head and tick every subjective box in their head? How will you know you've done that? Well, you don't know, and you won't ever know. So if that's your objective, I would say it's a waste of time. And if that's what's keeping you up at night.
And can I suggest here that it's important to set actually some kind of like an outcome you expect from your public speaking interaction or involvement? So what you actually would like to achieve? It's coming to investors. It's one thing. It's coming to employees. I mean, delivering some kind of like big change is coming. So it's a different one. So if I get it right, it's important to make this criteria objective, because when it comes to subjective judgment, um, it's hard to be clear on this point. Or
Okay. Well, I think if we go back to basics, the whole point about making speeches is to deliver value. Yeah. If you're standing up in front of a bunch of investors, you need to appeal to them. You need to show them something about yourself, something about your company's values that will appeal to them. Now, yeah, if let's say you have 10 investors in the room and they all want to buy into you, I would say that's a very successful day out. If you only get 1 out of 10, maybe there's some work needs to be done on the pitch, or whatever it is that you're offering them. But if you're delivering value, that is the whole purpose of making speeches. Yeah. Now, you can measure that, if you like, by how many people buy into you. That's good feedback. If nobody's buying into you, you've got to be back to the drawing board and start from scratch, and try and get some feedback from the group of investors to find out what their objections are.
and basically value is also subjective, so you
Sure.
need to, the value comes from the people you're addressing to, not only from your
Well,
assumptions. And if you're talking about any kind of idea to be delivered,
yeah.
you need to be balanced. I liked your point when we had this preliminary discussion that actually communication is about delivering the message to a group
Mm.
of people. It's not about presenting your idea. So you need to take your ego out of it and focus on whom you're
Focus
delivering
on,
to.
yeah, absolutely. It's always about the audience. If you think about it, without an audience, you don't need a speaker. That's the bottom line. So there's got to be a purpose for the speech. Now, if you can meet that purpose, if you can meet the values of that speech consistently, that tells you that you're doing a decent job. Yeah, maybe you can measure that. All right. So if you think about the audience, why are they there? What is their expectation? Somebody has led them to believe that if they show up for your speech, there's going to be something in it for them. Every audience is driven by self-interest. They're not necessarily driven by you, the speaker. But again, if you get a bit of a reputation for delivering value, for being known in your niche, for being known as somebody who delivers value regularly, not just in speech making, but in whatever the discipline is, and people like working with you, that's when we start building a really good reputation. So I think that's the key.
Hmm. And let's return to the public speaking itself. I mean, as a process. For me, for instance, every time I need to do public speaking, I feel anxious. I'm very loose in my legs. My head is hazy, and I want to run to the bathroom and sit there during the whole speech I need to deliver. I feel very uncomfortable. I'm checking my notes. Do I have enough facts? Are they fancy? Are they triggering? Are they useful? Whatever. And I know that pretty same stuff goes inside of the head of a lot of people who are extremely experienced speakers, they're journalists, they run business, but they still feel this, uncomfort. So what are your recommendations how to actually to maybe there is some kind of science behind of this, how we can empower ourselves to feel more confident to help our body to overcome this stress and fear?
Okay. Well, I think the first thing is, yeah, there's lots of things you can do. I think it all starts with breathing. If you can control your breathing, that's definitely a good thing. I think if you exercise regularly, that makes you feel more comfortable and more confident when it comes to something. I know we're breathing all day, every day, of course, but when we get anxious, our breath becomes quite shallow, and that means that we're not taking as much oxygen in. And some people smoke. What else do we do? Um, one of the things we want to do is get that oxygen in. So when we breathe in deeply, for example, take a deep breath in and then you hold it. And then when you exhale, we want to exhale in a very slow and elongated way. This sends a signal to the parasympathetic nervous system to slow the heart down, because one of the symptoms of anxiety is increased heartbeat. When we feel
Mm-hmm.
that we can't control a situation, and this is where anxiety comes in, by the way. Let me just probably going to jump off at a slight tangent here, but I think it's an important one. If we can just draw a distinction between fear and anxiety. Fear is about a very real physical threat to your life and your body, and it invokes the sympathetic nervous system, yeah, which creates a whole raft of physiological reactions in your body in a fraction of a second. Anxiety, on the other hand, you get the same feelings, but it's always thought generated. And it's thought generated because you feel that whatever the promise is, whatever you're looking to achieve, you start believing or thinking that you're not going to be able to control the outcomes. Yeah.
Mm.
So if you think about that with your public speaking, if you think about going for a job interview, why do people get anxious about going for a job interview? Well, you can be great at your job. You can have a great CV. You can interview brilliantly. You can answer questions.
And you still can be
Yeah,
out.
and you can create a great rapport with the panel, and there's still no guarantee that you're going to get the job. All you can do, and this is life really, this is a great summary for life. All you can do, all we can ever do is, we've got to be in it to win it, because in life there are no guarantees. If you ask somebody on a date, there's no guarantee you'll get a yes. But if you don't ask anybody on a date during your life, you're probably going to end up with a very lonely life. Yeah. So all the things.
And basically, here we're coming to the advice that you need to control what you actually can control. It's your body, for example, how you breathe. Do you have enough information, whatever? I mean, but you don't need. It's very tricky one. I mean, you can't just dismiss outcomes because they're important if you're talking to investors, job interview, I mean, whatever like public speaking issue you have. So how to actually reframe this? Because you can't tell yourself, okay, outcomes are not important. I need, to get this flow state. I'm not sure it's going to work if you understand that you need to get this round of funding. But on the other hand, you need to focus on process deeply. It will allow you to perform your best. How to
Yeah, well,
balance
like I
this?
said, I think it all begins. It's an iterative process. It's not something that begins here and ends here. It's something that continues throughout your life. So, for example, when I was a child, I was a very keen footballer, and I used to I used to play for the school team. I used to get nervous before football matches because you want to win, and when you want to win, and the following day at school, you want to talk about it to all your friends, and when you win, people are really nice to you. They put you on, they pat you on the back, and that's really nice. And when you lose, nobody talks to you. So we want to win more than we lose. So, but there's something about that. As I got older, and we start doing more deeper and more complex training, then breathing comes into this. Breathing and recovery comes into it very, very quickly. And again, as a young person, I realized the value of breathing, meditation, and visualization. These are great things, and they cost you nothing. Yeah, meditation. We just want to calm our mind down, empty your head of all the anxieties. Focus on what you want. Visualize the outcomes you're looking for, and breathe. I think, again, coming back, they say, and it's true, breathing's the first thing you ever do, and it's the last thing you ever do. And you're probably going to do it, billions of times during your life. So sometimes, like I say, when we get nervous, our breathing goes very, very shallow, and that creates a little bit of a problem in the brain. Your brain is a really interesting, organ. So your brain uses 20% of your body's oxygen. Yeah. So brain, I weigh 88 kilos. My brain weighs 1.4 kilos. My brain uses 20% of my body's oxygen, but it needs to, because your brain's your command and control center. It's connecting, it's talking to all of your other systems in your body, your respiratory system, your digestive system, your endocrine system, your musculoskeletal system. All of these things need oxygen, and everything's running through biofeedback loops. And it takes a huge amount of oxygen to get all of that information flowing around the body. Now, what we want to do, I just repeat what I said earlier about breathing. When we take a deep breath in, so you want to feel your chest and your lungs, your chest rises. That means your lungs are inflated with oxygen. And then we want to hold it for a short while, 5, 6 seconds, and then in a very slow, controlled way, we want to exhale. That sends a signal to the parasympathetic nervous system to slow the heart down, and that says to your body, everything's under control. Yeah. Now, the good thing about that as a footballer and as a speaker is you don't need to do that on the day of the speech. You can do 10, 15 minutes of that a day, every day before you make speeches, or when you're next playing competitively or something like that. The way that works is if you do those exercises regularly, what it does is condition the mind and the body to behave in the way that you want it to when you come under pressure.
So basically, can I sum up that it's important to create a supportive system for your body with this oxygen breathing exercise, for instance, so you could perform your best, and you can not allow anxiety, fear, or any kind of the stress outcomes to block how you think. Because literally, if you've done your homework, I mean, your slides are nice, you have an idea, you worked on your value, it means that you're prepared. And in this case, the only way to perform your best is actually focusing on performing, which normally anxiety and fear don't allow you to do, because there's such some kind of like internal overthinking, this like body effects with oxygen, without, because of the lack of oxygen and whatever. And it's very interesting that so it's like, I don't know, maybe through business system. So you need to do your homework. You need to work properly on your value according to your audience, not your ego. And you need to support your body, so your body and mind, your brain could perform their best.
Yeah, yeah. Again, there's certain planning, preparation techniques that we can do. So yeah, it's like driving a car. Going back to the analogy of driving a car, it doesn't all happen at once. You've got to go through the exercise multiple times. You're going to make mistakes, but you learn from the mistakes. That's got to be the good news. Yeah, that we have a saying in England
Yeah,
that the man who makes no mistakes makes nothing. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
So we learn from those mistakes, and I think humans, we're very good at learning, and we don't want to keep making the same mistakes because we know that that's going to hold us back, and people will lose confidence in us if we keep making the same mistakes time after time. Now, again, public speaking, you don't always have an audience, and if you've not, let's say your last presentation wasn't great and you've got to wait 3 months before your next one, that's going to prey on your mind for 3 months. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but the great in England, we have opportunities. There are speakers clubs, there are speakers organisations. You can sign up. You can, well, actually, you can come on my courses. You can get a great deal in 1 day or 2 days, and then if you go and practice that regularly, then there are places where you can go and practice where the stakes are low. Generally, in business, the stakes are higher. You're surrounded by your colleagues and maybe your clients, and those are places where you don't want to get it wrong. But there are voluntary organisations where you can go and learn and practice regularly in England and generally around Europe. And it's just a question of going regularly, practicing what works, get in front of an audience regularly, make eye contact, build rapport, so that when you've got to do this for real, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to feel like
Yeah, it's
second
already like a
nature.
skill, like a
Yeah.
habit. Yeah. And can I ask you one tricky question here? Because you're like touched a very important topic. So today, public speaking is much more than actually speaking in the audience. Sometimes you need to, I mean, like a podcast. Some people they do like self podcasts, for example, or you do I don't know short video, whatever for whatever reason. And here you don't see the exact audience. So it's my personal struggle as well. If I need to deliver something in front of the screen and there are a lot of people behind the screen, so basically I can't see them, like a big Zoom conference, I have no feedback
Sure.
loop to
Yeah.
understand, I mean, are they still here
Yeah.
or not? So how to support yourself in this kind of situation when you need to actually perform to the audience which you can't even see?
Well, during COVID, I was invited by a former student. He's the director of a library in a university in India, in Delhi, and he's got like 10,000 students, and he wanted me to talk to them. So I talked to them, and yeah, I got 10,000 people on the line, and I don't know any of them, and I can't see any of them, but I can see lots and lots of things going on in the chat, which is nice. And again, we've got lots of questions. So just like you and I are having a conversation now, whether this is a what this feels like a one-to-one conversation. This is a podcast, but it can be broadcast to lots and lots of other people. But just have that conversation, whether it's one-to-one or 1 to 1,000 or 1 to 10,000. Have that conversation. Now, I always find the eye contact thing a little bit difficult because I'm looking at you. I know I should be looking at the camera because then you probably feel there's a bit more eye contact right
Absolutely.
now. But,
Very
but I much
confusing.
prefer talking to you because I feel like I'm actually talking to a person and not just a
Yeah.
dot on my laptop here. So I know the rule, but I like to break it a little bit. But again, have a conversation, be yourself, and whether it's one person or 10,000 people or a million people, be you, be your authentic self, share the best of what you have, and what more can you do?
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. And we're like almost running out of time, and one like my two favorite questions. So basically, some kind of a closing comment, killer advice, which resonates to the most of your students, for instance, for those who are struggling with public speaking, and maybe resources for further development. So for people who still feel uncomfortable with public speaking, recommend some kind of like book, I don't know, article or whatever. So so for them it would be easier to start.
Okay, well, like I said, I think a lot of people have tried public speaking and didn't get on with it at first, and I was one of those people. My first professional speech, I had a panic attack in front of the board of the Co-op, which is a big company in Manchester, and so I was about 24, I think. Didn't go very well, and but I always think it's not where you start, it's where you finish, and I'm not finished yet. So don't let negative things, we've all had negative situations, coming back to what I said about asking somebody in a date. Not all dates go very well. You can go on a date, it can be a bit of a disaster. That doesn't mean all dates will be a disaster. uh, you know but we learn through experience. The only way you're going to be any good at the things that you want to do are by practicing what works, and you're going to make mistakes, but that shouldn't deter you from getting out there and doing whatever it is you feel that you need to do, whether it's public speaking, going on a date, being good at interviews. There's only one way to improve the technique of those things, and that is: one, go in there with a plan; two, execute the plan; three, ask yourself, how did the plan go? And then what can you do differently? What could you do better? Every time I run a class, I do like a 5-minute review. I ask myself, what did I think went really well today? What didn't go as well as it could have done? And what happens is, over a period of time, things start evening out. Yeah, and you get a feeling if something's not happening the way you expect it to. Maybe there's something wrong in the classroom, or maybe you've missed a step out, something like that. And we can improve. Yeah, we just need to improve step by step. Some people just want to, if you're a golfer, if you go and play golf for the first time, don't expect a hole in one. Yeah, I think a lot of people expect a hole in one, and it just doesn't happen. You need to practice regularly. You need a plan, and you need to know what to do if something's going wrong. So over a period of time, we improve, we get better, we get more confident. I think the confidence thing just comes with knowing that you're doing the right thing at the right time most of the time. And if every interaction, if every interview were exactly the same, I wouldn't. When you invited me here, I would just have said, well, no, it's because it's all interviews are the same. But of course, they're not. They're not. It's if you want to be involved, get involved and enjoy it. But it's never ever the same. Every time is a new experience. So, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for accepting my invitation. And maybe you would can recommend some kind of book, I don't know, fiction, non-fiction, so you to grab more wisdom and confidence in practice. And because today we're too obsessed with the quick fixes, you walk in any kind of bookstore and there's plenty
Sure.
of books on the
Uh-huh.
bookshelves which address you how to fix your life in 5 minutes. But actually, it doesn't happen in 5 minutes. I mean, our brain works differently. We need years to instill heavily some kind of habit. So how further
Okay.
reading for those who are
All right. I've
struggling.
I've written a couple of books. The first book was called The Fear Doctor, and essentially it's about my journey as a speaker. So I told you a moment ago about my panic attack in front of the board of the co-op. So that's chapter one. So that's a bit of a disastrous start. But then it's a little bit more autobiographical about what happened next. How did my journey go? But the second half of the book is very much about how to become an improved speaker. So, I talk about posture, body language, use of voice, things like that. Just those things, getting those basics right regularly, you'll feel that you're making progress, and that when the eye contact's good, and you can build a little bit of humor into your subject matter. That's always a nice feeling, that you can create a good atmosphere within the classroom or the auditorium, the people that you're working with. So that was my first book. I wrote a second book called Anxiety Quick Wins. So if you have anxiety, the premise of the book actually was that in England before COVID, if you were diagnosed with some form of anxiety or phobia, in England, you might have to wait anywhere between 9 and 12 months before you got a referral to a specialist. So COVID had just hit. We were into lockdown, and I thought the premise of the book would be, you know, if you've just been, if you've got to wait 9 months before somebody sees you, what would you do to look after yourself with 9 months?
I think it's an amazing tagline. Value is very
Yeah.
clear.
So I just thought that was a great thought for a book about, yeah, how would you look after yourself in COVID, knowing that you might have to wait anywhere between 15 and 18 months uh, to see a specialist. And I just went through all the different ways of, again, for me, COVID went very, very quickly. We had a beautiful weather in England, amazingly. So my wife and I did a lot of gardening projects. We did some long distance walking, and I wrote 2 books during COVID. So every day for me, I was busy, busy, busy. So I think if you're intellectually challenged, if you're doing things that you enjoy doing every day, time flies really quickly. So that was very much the premise of the book: finding things that you really enjoy doing. It's a bit like the old, these are a few of my favorite things. And if you do them regularly, time goes very quickly.
I think it's very powerful ending of our podcast to focus on what you actually love to do and embed it into your daily practice and business and
Yeah,
whatever.
absolutely.
This will make your life full,
Yeah, do the
actually.
things that bring you joy.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vince, for accepting the invitation and sharing your wisdom and experience. I encourage everyone to follow Vince on LinkedIn and deep dive into his books. And thank you, everyone who were watching us live and going to watch us later in the record. And see you in upcoming episodes.
Okay, cheers.